It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome in. It is the Redbird Reboot podcast. We're here talking to you with Blake and Marcos, Blake Mercury 7 and Marcos Labrada at Pancake Soul. Dude, it's been just a week. The Cardinals have finished up finalizing their coaching staff, but the NFL Combine is in full swing. We've got tons of news from there to be able to talk about. We'll talk tonight a little bit about Kyler Murray. There's also been some NFL Combine report grades, which are no longer going to be made public, and yet it's still being made public through leaking sources, just not published necessarily by the NFLPA. We'll wrap up with some Combine news and reviews and what we're kind of thinking with the Arizona Cardinals with picks number 3 and pick 34. Marcos, as we get started tonight, how are you doing?
I'm doing good so far. I just wish the temperature wasn't so hot because it's already getting to the 80s. But other than that, it's pretty good. I'm kind of wanting to see what's going to happen within the next couple of weeks, if we get any good news or not. I was caught off guard this morning because I saw a notification on my X that said that we signed Malik Willis to a 3-year deal. The right after that, I saw another tweet that had to do with Marvin Harrison Jr. wanting to be a number 1 somewhere. So I obviously didn't just jump to any conclusions after that. Wanted to see if everything was verified. It wasn't, so I guess fortunately so that it wasn't in one part, but in the other part I kind of was disappointed.
Yeah, no, it was one of the places at least where we got to talk a little bit about a new facility that's coming. There was groundbreaking that the Arizona Cardinals were able to do. That was one of the things that we have, a new facility that's going to go live, will not open until 2028. That's something at least that's a good mark. It's something that these report cards we'll talk about in a little bit were part of pushing to be able to show that the Cardinals had below average to just downright not NFL caliber facilities that they had. We also were able to see a little bit into the timeline of Kyler Murray. It's going to be super exciting. Let's go and pop out a couple of people in the chat. We got Hobo Raider saying Cards going 17-0 and scoring in the Super Bowl, baby. Don't think that's going to be the case, Hobo Raider, but appreciate you popping in. Let's go and let's get into it. We're going to be talking here at least about the Arizona Cardinals and finishing up their coaching staff. So the Cardinals coaching staff, they're able to sign a couple of more guys who are in. They've gotten some players from, or I should say, one of the coaches that they were able to bring in is a guy we've seen before. They brought back Chris Cook. Connor Senger is returning as the pass game specialist. Matt Feeney is returning as outside linebackers coach. We're also able to see that they're getting a defensive guy in, I believe it is, see if I can remember his last name over here. It's not officially onto the team site yet, but they're able to get someone out of the SEC who's been at Texas as a defensive line coach for a little while. The Cardinals coaching staff is unique, I think, because they had a couple of guys who ultimately are being reported by Brett Zenitz, I believe. The thing we talked about last week with Matt Schaub being the QB coach, that's one of the biggest ones that we've had. Let's see if we can get the remaining names that I can find here. Pete Kwiatkowski is the name that we're looking at, who's got some experience. Christian Garcia comes in along with Brent Jackson. Rod Wilson is the one that I believe comes from the University of Miami. And that's one of the places, at least, where we can talk a little bit about there's a certain set of players from the University of Miami that are going to be there. I think it was Rod Wilson was the outside linebackers coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going to move to be just the linebackers coach for the Arizona Cardinals. So you're hopefully finding him to be able to bring over a potential free agent such as Leo Chenal from the Kansas City Chiefs. That would be a name that you'd be familiar with. And Marcos, there's a full-on coaching staff that's taken place. It has one of the lowest amount of experience for years in terms of a coaching staff in the NFL, but that's not really a surprise under Nick Rawls. We knew the Cardinals are going to have an uphill battle with Nick Rawls returning as the defensive coordinator and with Matt LaFleur as the head coach and in charge of the offense.
This is always going to be that way. We're always going to have a coaching staff that's going to have very few players or very few coaches that are going to have experience and whatnot, because this is usually a designation for people to take a step up from, whether it's like, hey, we're going to take a step up and get a promotion to the next level. We saw that with Bruce Arians. He took the coaching job here because he did interim with the Indianapolis Colts, and then afterwards he retired for 1 year, immediately was given the job with Tampa Bay, and he parlayed that into a Super Bowl after he paired up with Tom Brady. Cliff Kingsbury has been a coach here. Obviously, he got his foot in the door, but he hasn't been able to sniff that position since then. But he's always in the round to possibly be a head coach or a commodity coming up. Like he was able to get himself into the door by doing so. You have Drew Petzing, who was the offensive coordinator, now he's the offensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions. You have Nick Wallace, who I mean, he got himself some experience as defensive coordinator. So I'm just talking about this experience-wise with how the team works.
Yeah.
It works in that manner. Let's not forget that I believe it was Steve Wilkes was not a head coach before that. He
Correct.
coach from Carolina, and even though he still hangs around the NFL, this was his opportunity to try to get a job and fix
Yeah.
or lead the Cardinals in the right direction. So as far as coaching staffs are concerned, this is just always going to be that type of spot until we take ourselves serious or we have a different owner in this organization.
Yeah, the Cardinals are something that are very unique, I think, as far as when it comes to what they're able to do, because this is a team that's built around essentially planning for the 2026 season to try to win now, but also recognizing they're not going to probably be winning now. The 2027 season has better quarterbacks, better play. We'll talk a little bit about the main free agent that we expect the Cardinals to be in on, but that's something at least that first we want to go ahead and talk about the NFLPA report card. So there's been some news we'll talk about with Kyler Murray this week. We'll talk about that here. I'm going to flip the originally scheduled programming around a little bit. We'll talk about these report cards first, Marcos, because they're really interesting. It's a good segue to go from talking about how the Cardinals are in a bad spot with Michael Bidwell, because that is ultimately what we get to say with the Arizona Cardinals and the report cards this year. There was one owner this year who received an F when it came to the Arizona Cardinals and the rest of the NFL, and it was Michael Bidwell. He received an F for team ownership. Some other interesting cases, treatments of family was a D+. The families really want to be taken care of, given us fun playroom. The Cardinals did up with a playroom, but being able to get like a lot of tickets to see. The home game field was given a B. Food and the dining area was given a C-, up from an F that they had previously. Nutritionist and dietitian, I believe, increased from last year. However, their locker rooms and training rooms, F-, D+. Locker rooms were just redone a few years ago. They're going to need, I think, at least a new setup for the locker rooms is one of the places that we've seen. The weight room and part of the training room were two of the lowest graded. That's going to be fixed with the new team facility. The strength coaches, people love. The position coaches, this is interesting now. These are going to be specifically to your position coach, your offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. They got a B- for Drew Petzing. Some people would probably disagree. Some people would say that, but they gave him a B- for the Cardinals players. Nick Rawls got a C+. That was the worst of the head coach, offensive or defensive coordinator, or special teams coordinator. That was the lowest grade. They gave a B+ for Jonathan Gannon this year, one step back from where he was at with an A grade a year ago. And Money Austin Fort got a B as being one of the better overall general managers that players like to work with. He's pretty fair with contracts, has a lot of players that are young and drafted. What really stands out, Marcos, here is F. And that's where when you take a look at the rest of the NFL in terms of who got the lowest grades overall, Cardinals really didn't get a very high grade for their ownership group. I believe it was Ben Albright who pointed out that the Cardinals had a B-ranked head coach and an F-ranked general manager. That was, I believe, the four lowest ranked. Let me pull it up here and see what it was here. Sorry, I'm having to pull up at least. Here we go. NFLPA report card results. This is from Diana Russini, excuse me, sorry.
Okay.
A plus for Sean McVay and Dan Quinn, A for a lot of Ben Johnson and others, and then you see that the B plus is for Jonathan Gannon, Raheem Morris. When you're looking at last year, we can see offensive coordinator for the Rams, Mike LaFleur, he was given a B grade. So he comes in and automatically is the highest graded coach on the NFL coaching staff because the Cardinals, from what the Rams graded him, they graded him as ultimately a B plus. There was no head coach who got lower than a C minus. That was just Kevin Stefanski with the Browns. But
Wow.
for that, pretty much NFL players, they work with coaches, they like their coaches. That's pretty much how it goes for the most part. That's something I think is really interesting to me. But yeah, it's something where we can talk a lot about it. We've talked about it till we're blue in the face. Michael Bidwell, he goes on record, says, I am the team president. He's asked about it again, confirms, no, I am the team president. As a team owner, he's been given that as an F. We should probably start grading team president at least on a similar scale. But right now, the grades that he's given is not good. And that's something that stinks if you're a Cardinals fan because you feel somewhat shackled to what they have. The Cardinals ranked as the 31st overall when it came to overall NFL head team grades. The only team that was worse than them was the Pittsburgh Steelers, was ranked at 32 overall this year.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I'm looking at it right now from Dov Kleiman. He went ahead and did the breaking NFL ownership grades from the NFLPA report cards and put them all in order. What a shocker! The Vikings get an A plus. You got Ravens and Broncos. So those three organizations plus the Broncos, who I technically I'm a coworker of theirs, or I'm a employee of them. Obviously owned by the Walt family. Commanders A plus. So that's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So the Commanders go from having one of the worst and most embarrassing owners in the nation in the NFL. There was other teams feeling so bad, and we're in that bubble right now. We're in that section right now where other teams feel bad for us. The whole entirety fan base of the NFL at that point was just like, we guys need to figure out how to get this guy fired. You guys have to do whatever you can to get. I can't even remember what his name is, but that Commanders owner was just so embarrassing. It was so bad that the whole NFL came together and said, we need to figure out how to get this guy fired. Obviously, with the situations that was happening back in 2020, the embarrassment of that, the subpoena that he avoided by going onto a yacht and going into international waters to avoid the law, essentially. I mean, of course, he can get away with it. And then, of course, they culminated to the fact that, like, he lost a lot of sponsorships because of a lot of, you know,
Yeah.
issues within, we saw the conduct and whatnot.
There's a
So
lot of problems that they had with that ownership group. And Michael, we've said, is still a step ahead of that, but he's still being ranked as one of the lower ownership groups.
I remember listening to a podcast a long time ago. I think it was you and Johnny Venerable. You guys are talking about, like, if he is now changed or if he is now removed from being ownership, what does that make us? Well, it makes us the worst. Now Michael
Mm,
Bidwell is essentially the worst NFL owner. There's a picture of him on his tweet because he wanted to go ahead and put it up there with the little smirk on his face, saying, "Yeah, that's your owner right there. You guys are the worst," and it's embarrassing. I mean, the Patriots get a B minus, and I mean, say what you want to say. Eagles get a B, so they're in the lower part of the lower half of it. Of course, the Cowboys get a B, even though the owner is essentially the biggest control freak in the NFL. You'd think that somebody like Michael Bidwell would probably bump himself up, but he doesn't want to remove himself from being the team's president, and that's what's crippling our team. He's in it. He's in the position of making decisions. It is his investment. He is going to want to go for his main interest, and his main interest is not going to align with team success. He may say so, but that ultimately comes down to, like, hey, do I really want to go all out for this investment right here? What about if I do the casitas? That'll bring in more, like, top line, like, business owners and families who have a lot of wealth to be able to come into the stadium,
yeah.
have a great time. And I was like, what about the everyday person? Those are your main fans, and you're giving them a middle finger.
Yeah. And that's something that can be fixed, I think, ultimately. But it's going to have to take some work. It's going to take humility. It's going to take also, like we saw already, one of the things that the report card showed was that the Cardinals were ranked one of the lowest in terms of team facility. So by putting $150 million of his own money into a brand new facility, getting it all out of the tax credit and everything that we've needed, as far as with the Cardinals to be able to have a much better player experience for the headquarters. It's all due to these report cards as part of why we talk. One of the things I'm curious about here, at least, is training room is a D plus, training staff is a B minus. The strength coaches have also been graded pretty well. There were quite a lot of injuries this past year. I know players will work directly with those coaches. A lot of times you don't see those be very low grades. That's something I'm very curious about to see is, do the Cardinals make any changes with their strength and conditioning staff after this last year? Because they graded pretty well with the players, but there was a lot of injuries. I think what you'd look at is if the Cardinals bring in a new training staff, stay healthier, you're going to want to say, did they keep those same grades up or did those grades slip a bit, but their players were healthier? That's something that's very interesting to me to see.
Yeah, I got one more thing to pull up. I'm sorry to go back to the
Yeah, go
owners
for
and
it.
whatnot. So it's crazy how winning can transform a franchise, and how 1 year of decisions and going the right direction and getting the right guy into the building to be able to change your culture and essentially go for it with your conviction on a player that you really did want and another one that you wanted in back to back like picks. And I'm talking about the Texans. Texans being one of the worst ownership, Cal McNair being embarrassing, firing African American black head coaches one season after another to just hold the mainstay, gets himself what I assumed or not, what I would say was the top of the list in head coaches in that year, and he comes in, changes the culture altogether. They know what they want to do. They're in unison moving forward. It looks like Cal McNair has changed his entire perception around him to the point
Mm-hmm.
that I saw this funny tweet where he was actually he was trying to get a high five from CJ Stroud. He left him hanging, so they went ahead and he just kept his hand up there, and people were trying to give him half fives from within the team. They said, no, 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 that's for CJ Stroud. So he basically was holding his hand the entire time until CJ saw him the very next day. But the whole point is like that's what media, that's what you can do with good media, with winning, and with just being good to your fans and whatnot, and that can change the perception of your team. And I would not for a second think that if maybe this was 2021, he that Michael Bidwell wouldn't rank at the very bottom at the very least, because there was a good vibe situation. The team was winning. They were 7-0. He had bought a jet, which I mean a team jet. It's an investment within your own team, of course, but at the very least, you thought to yourself, it felt good to be a Cardinals fan at that time, and it
Yeah.
just
It's been a tough couple of years for the Arizona Cardinals. They have 15 wins. It's an average of 5 wins a season over the past 3 years. The Jonathan Gannon era ended with the Cardinals being perhaps one of the most losingest teams of the last 3 years. So obviously it's going to be the case. Question for those wondering why I'm showing potentially the Rams live. And that's because if you take a look at the Rams and their offensive coordinator grades, Mike LaFleur got an A for the that would be the highest grade of any of the coaches or coordinators on the Cardinals, because Jonathan Gannon only got a B plus. If the Rams loved what Mike LaFleur did, your hope is that you can bring an A in from the Los Angeles Rams with Mike LaFleur into the Arizona Cardinals.
yeah, that's actually good. You see both defensive and the offensive coordinator both getting A's. That's why they got head coaching jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do a quick shout out over here, at least to we've got Elite Flight saying, "What's up, guys? Welcome. Glad to have you here watching online for our podcast." And again, you can be able to either watch us online, listen to us with our audio versions of our podcast that we'll have, as well as follow us on x.com. Let's talk a little bit of Kyler Murray now that the grades are done. We know some of these grades are going to be changing in the near future for the Arizona Cardinals. Let's talk a little bit of Kyler, because the news came out from Fox Sports that Kyler Murray is requesting to be cut by the Arizona Cardinals. He's requesting to be released. That's per Fox Sports, and we're not really surprised by this. We think that it's very much been something that's a long time in the making. It's coming to a close by the time of the Kyler Murray era. A lot of people have wondered, could the Cardinals trade him? And the answer seems to be pretty simply, Kyler Murray's contract is something where when you trade for that contract, even if the Cardinals picked up enough of a cap room for this year, he'd have to be cut, and you'd have to take that 2027 numbers would have to be on the book. Instant you take on that contract, so it's essentially a 2-year deal. That's something that everyone is not wanting. I think that what we need is for people to recognize Cardinals are not going to get anything for Kyler Murray. They're likely going to release him before that 2027 money is due, and he's going to have the opportunity to pick his team. And that's tough to be able to say, but Kyler openly saying, I don't want to be the head, I want to be the quarterback of this team anymore. I'm looking for my release. I want to start with a new team. It's not any sort of a surprise, I think, at this point. But it is one of the places where it is kind of a sad end to the era. And I think we get to start talking about what the Kyler Murray era was in the NFL and with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. Were you trying to share a screen? I think
Oh,
because
no,
I
we're
could.
good. I've been looking for the Kyler Murray news for where it
Oh,
was for
okay.
Fox.org and trying to find that. Um,
Okay. No, just double checking over here because I can see a lot of movement. So there's two different types of like not narratives, but I don't know how I would name it. Just two different types of ways of being able to think about this. So with these things that are being leaked, I'm personally not a fan, and I have not been a fan of his personality and how he's handled things, and especially with him and his agent. I think his agent, I don't know why he stuck by him if it's the same one. I don't like the way he handles things, and it constantly causes like distractions with our own team when we're supposed to be moving forward. Now, we already knew that there was a possibility that Kyler Murray was not going to want to come back to play for the Arizona Cardinals. I understand why he wants to get released. Every player that has a contract as big as that would want to have their pick of going wherever they want to, especially since all you have to do is just sign maybe a minimal contract to be able to just still get paid that big portion, and you get all your guarantees in that circumstance.
mhm,
But that is the best outcome for him, but that's not the best outcome for the team.
correct.
If you can't find a trade partner and because he's leaking these things out, essentially teams are just gonna say, well, it's gonna be inevitable. He's forcing his way out. Eventually they will cut him because no team wants to give up any type of draft capital over it because it's not even about the draft capital, it's about taking on a portion of that contract as well. And they just want to call the Cardinals bluff, which by the way, we're the Cardinals, so we're gonna cardinal and we're gonna cave into it. We're gonna take a big loss on it, or if they want to, better yet, keep him on the roster, sit him, tell him, you know what, you're not gonna get it your way or whatnot. We're still gonna have to pay you either way. We're not gonna allow you to play for another team. If that's what you want to do and you want to call our bluff, we'll call your bluff then. And that's the other circumstance. From what I've understood is like there's people that are big supporters of Kyler Murray that after this move or after the things have been leaked are constantly they're out on him completely. One has called for his removal as effective as of now.
Mhm.
The other one has said, "You don't get your way. You sit there. We trade you. We don't care what you feel. You belong to us. So we're gonna do what we're gonna do. I don't care if you want to get released or not. We're not gonna acquiesce to your needs." So those are pretty strong,
Yeah.
like feelings and stuff.
Those are definitely strong. I think with Arizona, what we're looking at ultimately is just a lot of the things that I would say as far as what sums up the Kyler Murray era in Arizona has been frustrating. Even when trying to be able to move on, it's not like you're like, oh, cool, we get a draft pick to come in. It's like the DeAndre Hopkins trade. You remember the highlights, a lot of the good stuff, but you also remember he got injured at the end of the career. He came back and had the PED suspension, and it was just frustrating because it came to a disappointing end. One of the biggest things with Kyler we've talked about is his deep ball has not been the same in Arizona. He doesn't seem to have the same athleticism, although it's still very good. Like, let's not have any sort of areas. It's just not maybe the guy who can run a 4.3. I think there's similar issues with Lamar Jackson we got to see this year as far as where you're then talking, can he play from the pocket, being able to take a hit? It's one of the places where the Cardinals, I think, are looking to someone who's younger, like Malik Willis, and that's part of the narrative in sports. Like in sports, once you turn 30, things just seem to a lot of times fall off a cliff. Other times there's different injuries that are taken there. And the relationship seems to be shot. We talked about how a lot of what we had mentioned with Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals this year was it seemed like he was on track to play against the Cowboys. He'd been out against the Colts game. And then he just shut down. And you're like, hey, whatever happens, it's not quite right. Whether Kyler wasn't quite right and needed to have the whole season off, whether he wasn't going to play, whether he was willing to play, but the team just went and benched him. That relationship meant things were donezo. And what we're talking about, at least here, is that the Cardinals, they've got 2 years left on the Kyler's 5-year deal. They're probably going to cut him now to be able to avoid having to pay out the guarantees on that contract next year. Kyler's supposed to be talking with the Cardinals at the combine. It sounds like with him in his camp. I think the best question is going to be where does Kyler end up? Because we know where Kyler wants to end up. He wants to be a Minnesota Viking. That's like pretty much the book is that he probably would be fine with going to Atlanta as well. I could see him being a place to go to Atlanta. Where I think the question is that the best place for Kyler to go is to be a starting quarterback to go? I would almost argue it's probably best for you to be able to say, hey, what's a team that you can sit for a year, learn, develop, that has an offensive structure that's really going to favor you. Going to the Chiefs to be able to say, hey, Patrick Mahomes is going to be right for week one, but I'm going to sit behind him, learn from Andy Reid, be able to take on some of that, or going to, like, as some people have mentioned, could the Rams sign him? Ooh, now we're getting kind of spicy here. Could the Rams sign him and let Kyler Murray be the guy to take over from Matthew Stafford in another couple of years? That's one of those things that's possible when you cut him, is he can go anywhere. I think that there's a chance that he goes to the Jets, but the Jets would probably be looking at moving on to tank for the following year. The Dolphins are probably not going to want to take on another heavy quarterback contract. I think that it's possible that Kyler's going to not find the same sort of a camp, and that brings up a little bit of just talking about with over the seasons. You went into your podcast in depth with it on Monday, talking about the 2019, his rookie season, offensive rookie of the year, the rushing attack before he got hurt in 2020. We saw the team get off to a huge start in 2020, and then ever since then, 2022, we saw him ultimately kind of fail as a quarterback, tear his ACL, comes back with a little bit of promise going 4-4 down the stretch in 2023. And then last year, it just kind of reached a spot where the Cardinals were up. They had a 7-4 record at one point, and then finishing the season with a 8-9 record, only had one win down the stretch. That kind of felt like that was the, okay, we've reached the point where Kyler is going to have to come through next year. And after that 2-3 start a year ago, we just knew it was kind of done. They were not going to be able to do more than 8-9 with Kyler Murray as their starter, and it's disappointing. But that, I think, is going to be the legacy, and the remembrance is going to be the times he lit the stadium on fire with plays like the Hail Murray, being able to have that comeback against the Raiders, his rookie start against the Lions. There's some great memories that go along with Kyler Murray, but at the end of the day, he did not have a 500 record as a quarterback starter in the NFL. And he's going to be remembered, I think, in Arizona as ultimately they drafted him in hopes to be the franchise quarterback. And I think that times he was the franchise quarterback, Marcos. But you can't just be a franchise quarterback. At times, you either are or you aren't. And he never really lived up to that billing.
Yeah, I so we went in depth because we were talking mostly about what do you feel about when you talk about Cliff Kingsbury, and it's intertwined with Kyler Murray, obviously, because Cliff Kingsbury coached Kyler Murray. He was his offensive coordinator for 4 years. He is the guy who pushed to get Kyler Murray for the Cardinals to draft Kyler Murray first overall over big names like Quinnen Williams and Nick Bosa. And so they, with them being intertwined, you think about, okay, do people hate Cliff Kingsbury because he failed essentially of making Kyler Murray the guy that he needs to be? Or was it more so the fact that, like, Kyler Murray is who he is, here's the ceiling, and Cliff Kingsbury is just not given enough credit for the type of work that he does, especially trying to bring something that you think is impossible, a college game, to the NFL and making it actually work out. So anyways, aside from that, we also spoke about, Kyler Murray. We went over like his little timeline that he had, and it was kind of special to see him gradually get better each year. You saw him make that big jump in 2022 at the very beginning. People don't often remember like that 2020 season, and I believe it was the first 8 games of that season. We were above 500. We just beat the Seahawks in primetime television in crazy good fashion, and we ended up, I believe, like, I'm not sure if we were leading the. I don't think we were leading the division at that time, but I think we were second. I'm not sure if we had like a 6-4 record, but we had an opportunity to make the playoffs that year. We were ahead when it came to wins and losses, and those last 2 games, unfortunately, not only were those the 2 games where Cliff Kingsbury kind of, turned like he soured the fan base with his press conferences and not being able to, deliver on those wins, but also Kyler Murray getting injured in that last game versus Los Angeles, where we most likely win if Kyler Murray stays healthy and he doesn't get rolled up on. So with that timeline that we went through, it's unfortunate that it never worked out. But I saw the writing on the wall as soon as 2020, what his limitations were. So I always kind of wanted to, hey, you got to make his strengths stronger for him to be able to continue with this type of success and whatnot, because I don't believe he's going to be able to operate with what the NFL operates on when it comes to like the type of offenses and the structures that they run. And I heard something interesting over I'm not sure if it was Florio or I don't know what insider it was, but apparently the Eagles wanted to trade for him at one point. And if I was to guess, it was probably sometime after 2021 to 2022. They wanted to trade for Kyler Murray. I find that really interesting. They run somewhat of the same
It's
type
a
of
similar
offense.
type of offense, yeah.
Yeah, it's shotgun heavy, static offense, and you have all those weapons, of course. I wonder how that would have turned out if that was the case, and Jalen Hurts being a similar type of quarterback. Although I will say the personalities are kind of different there. And if I was to pick to where his perfect landing spot would be, it has to be Atlanta. Atlanta not only would have all the weapons around him, but it would also it would also put him in a situation circumstance where they probably will acquiesce to his needs and his offense with maybe having that similar like Drew Petzing style, like he's already familiar with, but also having those weapons and whatnot. Yeah, I don't see him going to KOC up in with the
Yeah.
Vikings and whatnot. I don't think they would want him there. I think
Feels like
they
they would like Kirk Cousins back there, and then someone who doesn't lower, like that would not work out as well with JJ McCarthy for his confidence. Whereas Kirk Cousins, you can bring him in as like, oh, he's too old, he's going to be a backup, and if he beats out JJ in camp, then you can just roll with it, knowing at least that you're going to be moving on from him regardless. Whereas if you bring in Kyler Murray, then Kyler's going to have the expectation of starting over JJ McCarthy. It would just turn into an interesting case. So
yeah
I am very curious to be able to see exactly where his landing spot will be. But at the end of the day, it's something where as Arizona Cardinals fans, like Kyler sold a lot of jerseys, had a lot of people like with support. There's been as many opportunities as you're given. I think what it came down to ultimately from the film we've studied is Kyler with the height and losing some athleticism. Once the deep ball faded, we've seen the Cardinals have just not been able to sustain a winning record with Kyler Murray at this iteration of Kyler Murray. And it might mean they're going to need to have move him to a different team, and he's going to need to be moved for the Cardinals to be able to move forward. I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to be seeing when it comes to that. Now, what it means as far as the Cardinals this year for the quarterback position, I think that it's going to cement on two different names that are popped up. And the two different names that I see, at least, are one comes with a price tag that's going to be in a draft pick. One comes with a price tag that would be in terms of a payment that you're making. And that's going to be between Malik Willis and Tyson Bagent. We heard from John Gambadoro reporting that the Cardinals had interest in Tyson Bagent as their NFL quarterback. He's under contract for another year with the Chicago Bears. He just got signed to a contract. Comes out of a small school, undrafted free agent, wins the backup job in camp, has actually looked pretty impressive when he started. Hasn't looked like a world beater, but he's looked like a decent, solid Jimmy Garoppolo style guy with a little bit more legs and athleticism. Whereas Malik Willis is the big name because sat underneath Cardinals offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, looked good with his deep ball with a couple of different starts. He's progressed from his time in the pocket, and he was under Monty Austin for it when it came to the Tennessee Titans. Thank you very much, who drafted him. I think that the Cardinals are still going to be in on Malik Willis. It's going to be an expensive bit because it's sounding like he could be worth up to $30 million a year or so. Biggest competition for them. It doesn't sound like it's the Dolphins, surprisingly. It sounds like it could be the Cleveland Browns that could be looking to sign him with Shedeur Sanders on a small deal and Deshaun Watson's contract. Someone's going to end up getting the Willis lottery, that being said. I think the question is, Marcos, would you take a season of Malik Willis? And I'll give some of my thoughts on Willis versus Bagent and how that factors in to the Arizona Cardinals quarterback room.
Well, unfortunately, I can't give you a better analysis of that because I haven't watched a clip of film on the All 22. All I've seen is nothing but highlights from him, just typing it in and whatnot. My apologies for that. I should probably be better and watch more of that film with him. But his deep ball is very interesting when it comes to like his completion rate over to the outsides. Kind of reminds me of the fade routes or the fade balls that Kyler Murray used to throw. He is a taller, obviously a taller quarterback, one that can scramble and run, but maybe he's a better fit for this type of offense because, I mean, you have Mike being the brother of Matt LaFleur, who was able to at least make him work in whatever offense that he was running. So why wouldn't they share notes? Why wouldn't he just come over here and then pick up where he left off, essentially offensive wise, with the weapons like Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, and Marvin Harrison Jr. as your receivers? So it looks to me like it's almost too much of a matchup. Whereas if the Eagles somewhere else, like the Cleveland Browns, how confident are you with that system in that town that's known for killing quarterbacks or killing their careers and just shipping them out, especially since you're sharing a room with like Deshaun Watson, who I would assume even up to this time frame, if he ever was to come back and have a healthy season or whatnot, he would be the guy that you're competing with in that situation up there. Why would I even be around that? Like, especially you have Deshaun Watson, you have Shador Sanders, two big personalities to have to share like like a room with and whatnot. No, thank you. I think he would be more fitting to be an Arizona Cardinals than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's something that we'll want to be able to see. For me, I think at least it shows that your fan base that you care because you're going to saying, what are the top free agent quarterbacks this year? And the answer is it's Kyler Murray's number one, and then Malik Willis is number two. Going after and being able to land that and then having Tyson Bagent as a backup plan, that's what I think I would say you'd want to do. However, I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to maybe fire up the fan base. I think if you say, hey, Cardinals are going to get Malik Willis, it's the second biggest free agent we could have gotten. It just shows the state of the class. It's not going to be as big of a name as a Kirk Cousins. It won't be the name as an Aaron Rodgers. It's not even going to be the same as bringing in a Derek Carr. There just is not the name recognition. But for a lot of people, at least being able to look actually at the class, being able to at least take a flyer on someone like Malik Willis makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think it's going to make the biggest dent. Now, maybe it's a spot where you strike gold. He ends up actually putting up a very similar stat to Kyler Murray, but he's only ever thrown for 23 or less passes in every single start. So you've never seen what he looks like with 30 plus passes. It's always been we're going to run the ball and he's going to run the ball. We're not going to have him be a high volume passer. And we've only seen him play at least well this past year on the Green Bay Packers. He was not able to start and was beaten out by um, Will Levis, of all people, for the starting job with the Tennessee Titans, which also did not end up going well. He's developed pretty well, and that's something that I think we can say is that a lot of times your goal is not to get the Sam Darnold the first time around, but try to get them after their second or third team. He's the closest thing to being the next Sam Darnold in this current free agent class. And I think I'd rather take a flyer on him than a Jimmy Garoppolo, than a Geno Smith, than some of these older, maybe more proven quarterbacks, because your hope is you can get the guy, bring him in, and then have a foundation building block. I'm not sold that that's not going to be the case. And the Arizona, some people have just said, doesn't matter who you're putting out there, do the absolute worst quarterback you can, just get out there, put like Quinn Ewers for the Dolphins, for example. They're going to probably be starting him as a seventh round pick, potentially, is what the news out of the combine could be. I think at least it's admirable that the Cardinals are not trying to just say shove it to their fan bases. They're recognizing Monty Austin for it is at least in a place where there needs to be some retooling done. And I really hope that the Arizona Cardinals are able to get a deal done with Malik Willis, if just to prove that, yes, we're not going to just lie down and take it like a dog. We are going to be coming up here and trying to be able to compete for next season. It may not work out the same way that we're hoping that it would, with the Cardinals having a mysterious bounce back year. I don't think Malik Willis is going to move the needle that much, but I do think at least it's going to move the needle, and that's something that's sorely needed for this team, Marcos, to get that bit of hope into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is it's right over here. This is what I got this morning. Not sure if it's clear enough, but it's from NFL Drop, which is why as soon as I saw that, it's like this is not exactly a reputable source. Breaking: Cardinals signing Malik Willis to a 3-year deal worth 90 million. I was at first my reaction was like, okay, they're trying to take this serious. And as for Buzz X ZW 1945, look, I would like that option as well. I wouldn't have any issues with it. Why would we want to bring a different QB when we could just go with Jacoby Brissett? That I, I would be okay with that option as well. But it's just to try to show how serious you are as a fan base, or as a franchise. When you want to move in, you want to move with the quarterback who's very talented, who has a who has a strong arm, and he has athleticism. Kind of think about it as like a taller version of Kyler Murray, with the exception of the fact that he didn't have the production that Kyler Murray did, and has shown like some pretty good like pocket awareness and some accuracy with this deep ball in today's like NFL and whatnot. And he is running this type of similar system up with Matt LaFleur. So when people are able to watch the snaps that he's taking from under center up in Green Bay, they see something that they can work with and bring over. And maybe if you give him like if you give him the load and you give him the starter position and he's able to put up like 17 games, you never know. He might be able to be a 4,000 yard thrower and maybe a 30 plus touchdown guy. It was said that when he was coming out in his draft year, I believe it was 2022, that he was seen as like the Josh Allen type of prospect that had all the traits, that had the crazy good arm, that had the the accuracy to the outside and whatnot. And this is a guy that you might want to gamble with, but obviously he went in the third round, so people didn't really want to take him in the first or second round to risk it. But he was seen in some mock drafts as like, hey, do you want to take your chance? Take Malik Willis from Liberty, and maybe you can come up on the next Josh Allen. Well, obviously it took him some time, but I think it was for the good because if you put a QB out, if you throw a QB that's raw out there immediately, it may not always work out.
Yeah, no, and that's something at least that we'll get to see because we haven't seen a 17 game season. We've only even seen like a 3 game sort of place, and 17 is a very big difference from 3. It'd be a pretty big gamble for the Arizona Cardinals to take. One thing that is not going to be a gamble, and that is going to be on some of these linebackers this year in the NFL Combine. Let's wrap up our show here, but before we talk about just some of the Combine and some of that news with popping up here today, let's say hi to a couple of people who are some common time people in the chat at halftime. We got Dana, Red Feather Workshop, saying the treatment of families has not improved. That's something that we've noted, is that the families do not feel like they've been treated any better for the Cardinals there. Dana also says doesn't understand how Woody Johnson and Jerry Jones got to be. And the answer is if you treat your players well enough as an owner and manage the team poorly, that's something that shows that Michael Bidwell just does not really care as much, unfortunately, to that degree about players, to that same degree. We got how about Real Freedom is wishing that the treatment of players is better. We've also got the sociology professor saying, hi, hello, gents. It's good to see you in our chat as well. Joe, that is going to be, of course, the Cardinal Rule himself popping on our chat. We have someone who wants to bring in a different quarterback than Brissett. And this is a good question. Let's talk about this before the Combine. Why would you want to bring in a different quarterback than Brissett right now? We don't need to solve it. Rather aim for the draft. I think the answer is that we've seen with that 1-11 record, Jacoby Brissett is not capable of being a winning quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. You bring that back in another year, everyone knows you're going for that 1-16 record. That's something that I don't think is acceptable. I think that you can bring in maybe a Ty Simpson in the second round or trade up from the second round with Jacoby Brissett starting a couple of games, but having a plan for the future. Those are all acceptable. I think if you just say, you know what, we just had about 11 games with Jacoby Brissett. I think it was 12 games, actually. We won 1 game, 1-11. And we're going to bring him back for next year and just try to lose as many games as possible. Then you have the end of next year, Trey McBride saying, hey, I want to trade out from this team. We're losing way too much. You start wondering if the Cardinals are going to start trading different players away. You get multiple guys fired, and it just starts to turn into a complete bleep show. That's one of the things I think you can't have as a Cardinals team. What we saw this past year, we lost Jonathan Gannon. You're already going to see struggles for some guys who are just not going to be coming back. The end of the James Conner era, for example. You're probably talking at least about a lot of what fans want there to be is an easy, quick answer. Let's say the Cardinals did go through that next year. They tank, they lose, they become the worst team in the NFL, and Arch Manning decides to go back to school for another year, and there's no other quarterback that ends up declaring to come out. That quarterback may stink, and the quarterback who was taken number 2 overall actually goes on to become a good quarterback. Those are all possibilities. There's not an easy answer. As much as I said that, yeah, the Cardinals, I don't think they're going to be good next year. I think that you could call them tank merchants next year. I don't think that that justifies the Cardinals saying, we're going to just not try next year. I would respect the Cardinals for trying to at least get in a different name. If they want to keep Jacoby on the roster and have him compete, and if he wins the starting job, that's fine. But we've seen from the tape, he's not athletic enough to be able to be a full-time starter. He took a lot of hits and a lot of sacks. He threw the ball 40 times or so last year. There wasn't a running game to sustain him. But I think one of the things that we're talking about is we need to be able to recognize that Jacoby Brissett is a good enough quarterback to be able to play a quarterback for an NFL franchise, but he's not a good enough quarterback to win games for an NFL franchise. That's just how it is.
I I think he's I think if you give him an opportunity and you get a good running game, I think he could be a above average or solid. I've seen some of the throws he's made, and they're pretty. They're like there was that throw versus the Green Bay Packers that he threw over to the right side that I was begging Kyler Murray to make versus Tennessee Titans, and it was on one of those casual like smash concepts that had a flat route and a corner route, and it was on a 3rd and 17, and I was like, that was cold as ice. So I think there's a lot more factors to it, and he also right before he took sacks, he did take a lot of hits. But I say there was a lot of situations where he stepped in the pocket, he stepped into some throws, and he was able to make some and lose some. So I don't know. I think the circumstances weren't as good, but as you were talking about Jacoby Brissett, I understand why now the whole hype around Malik Willis is going. It's purely because of his deep ball. Looking at his stats and like what his grades were and how many completions he had and where he liked to target, they're phenomenal. He has no turnover worthy plays, and he has
Mm,
all completions 4 for 4 to the outside left, 30 plus yards, 39 yards over the middle, 2 for 2 for 64 yards on the outside right. And I mean, his intermediate throws are not that impressive at all. So
right.
that's what he needs to work on. But his deep ball was just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's something that we saw was that Michael Wilson was a huge part of that with the deep ball. We got to see that. We got to see that some of being able to be a merchant where he would just throw the ball 40 times was probably not sustainable for anything more than fantasy purposes. I think that's something at least that we can say. And what Dane is also talking about that's important is Cardinals probably have to show a way to sell season tickets after a lot of non-renewals. That was part of the Jonathan Gannon firing. If you're going to roll it back with Jacoby Brissett, you're going to have something else on the roster. And even if Jacoby wins out, you can say, hey, we gave it our best shot. We tried. Jacoby's still our best opportunity. We'll have another quarterback we can turn to at partway through the season. But that's probably going to be a case where you have to get some sort of new blood in to the Arizona Cardinals quarterback room.
Yeah, you want to sell hope. And Malik Willis, at the very least, with those type of numbers that I just mentioned and whatnot, that gives you hope that maybe that you're going to see a lot more like aggressiveness going downfield and whatnot. His intermediate, as I just mentioned, does need to be fixed because he's not very accurate when it comes to like balls between 10 to 15 to 20 yards and whatnot. But you can make a functional offense around somebody who can at least, scramble, take off, and get a couple first downs. We saw that ourselves with Kyler Murray, and to be able to attack deep on all sides of the field and whatnot. So that would just be the case. That it would just get the fans excited and get them intrigued to see what a Malik Willis led Cardinals team would look like.
Yeah, it's something at least that we'll have to see if they get beat out. Then you'll take a look at what the other option would be with Tyson Bagent, who I agree at least is probably going to be giving you just a 1 year upside type of starter. It does feel like the Arizona Cardinals 2027 draft is probably going to be more likely to have their long term solution than there would be with the 2026 class. Perhaps they're able to strike and get lucky with one of these late round quarterbacks, but it's just not a good year for QBs. What is a good year for, of course, is linebackers. The NFL Combine is going on, and there's a lot of debate about what the Cardinals will do at the top of the NFL draft. When it comes to the PFF mock draft guides and what most mock drafts are doing, we'll go over one of the latest mock draft simulators that we'll be able to see for the Arizona Cardinals and talk a little bit about some of their prospects. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to actually simulate here the beginning for those of you who are online so that we'll be able to take a look at the 2026. So right now with the Arizona Cardinals, we're seeing a couple of changes that have taken place at least here. So Fernando Mendoza, number 1 overall pick. Number 2, they've got the Jets taking Sonny Styles, who showed off with a incredible, incredible
Wow.
showing at the NFL Combine today, running a 4.47 40-yard dash, a vertical jump of 43 inches. If you want to talk about how crazy that is, 40 inches is considered an absurd vertical. He jumped 43 inches at 6'5". He's just been doing an incredible job with the broad jump as well. If you want to take a look at his overall comparison, he compares closer to DK Metcalf and Nick Emmanwori. People were started putting up comparison graphics to Calvin Johnson at 6'5", 244 with the vertical and the broad of 11 feet. He profiles as one of the better athletes in the NFL, profiles as a wide receiver or a safety. That is pretty absurd when you're coming to that level of athleticism and still weighing in at 244 pounds. This is one of those players that people, when like when you talk about the NFL Combine, here's what the Combine is. It's a piece of the pie. It's not the entire thing. You look at film, you then want to say, hey, this guy looks like he's athletic on tape. You check the testing at the combine. The testing is like, hey, the fast athlete is fast. We knew that. It just puts into perspective how fast they are. We got a good perspective to say, yeah, Sonny Styles looks athletic, explosive on tape. Oh, wait, he is that athletic and that explosive. When it comes to then looking at the measurables, you also take a look at what was the statistical output. So a lot of times when you're looking at Sonny Styles and his statistical output, you can take a look. Did this guy get after the quarterback? Did he put up sacks? Did he bat down passes? One of the things that we're talking about that's interesting is one of the guys who dominated the combine today running a 4.47 combine was Arvell Reese, who had 6.5 sacks this year as mostly an off-ball linebacker. Some people projected, said maybe he can be an edge rusher. I think that he profiles a little bit closer to the likes of a Ryan Shazier, who was a linebacker out of Ohio State as well, who also had about under 10 sacks his final year at Ohio State, never ended up having a huge sack total. He was still a tackle for loss king in a way that Arvell Reese. He had 10 tackles for loss. He's an explosive player. We can see all the measurables. He doesn't quite have the statistical play area. And that's a guy that's been talked a lot about with the likes of Ruben Bain and other people. It's a lot of people have said, pick one of David Bailey, Arvell Reese, or Ruben Bain Jr., to be one of the Cardinals picks at 3 overall. And that's something that when we pop a look at the tape and the combine and all of that stuff together, you kind of start to get together the whole picture of a profile. We knew that Arvell Reese is athletic. I think it's been a surprise probably to some people, Marcos, that he has not been as productive at the college level as other players have who are also being considered for that same draft pick.
Yeah, it's got to be like what he showcases film wise and whatnot, and it has to do with like maybe his technique is flawless. Maybe like the way that he's getting utilized is flawless as well. I will say that like that Sunny Styles comparison does kind of make me wonder if somebody like Sunny Styles would be playing in that apex big nickel role that I thought
Yeah.
essentially for Arvil Reese, because if people aren't catching up to what today's NFL is showing, they're moving towards getting bigger and stronger at that nickel role, because it's essentially like the hybrid linebacker position, you know, a la Isaiah Simmons, and that is becoming a more important and crucial role in today's defenses, and being able to not only uh, utilize yourself in the run and be able to be a good run defender, but also take on wide receivers in the slot, tight ends, and also do the dirty work up in the middle. And it's kind of becoming like the staple of a defense more so than linebacker. So I wonder if Sonny Styles' position would now be moved off to like not just Will, or not just just would be like either a Sam slash star
Yeah.
slash
He could
Dimeback.
play a star linebacker, I think, at least. You could potentially see a future where, if you were looking at it from a Cardinals perspective, you could see a rookie season where Mac Wilson stands in the center as the Mike, and then Sonny Styles is kind of the weak side linebacker. I would put him, like you said, at Sam, where he's taking on the tight end. You could also then drop back 2 of your linebackers, keep him at the strong side linebacker, and then move him to the Mike after year 1. That would be something you'd be able to see. But like you're talking about, he played safety his freshman year, moved to linebacker, so he showed that he had that athleticism. It's one of those places when we talk about what you want as a draft pick, you don't just want to have production. You also want to have athleticism. Your goal is also to find out about how it looks for the measurables. Do they measure up? Where is there a weakness in their game that is talking about? And one of the players that's popped up with a unique weakness in their game is going to be one of the guys who has got some very good film on him, and that would be Ruben Bain Jr. He measured in with arms under 30, I believe it was just at 30 inches and 7/8. Some teams, they said, measured him at 32 inches. Don't worry as much about that. That's just going to be a player who, when you're talking about how he plays the game, when you look at the film, you don't see that short arm length show up really that much at all. He uses quickness, agility, and velocity to be able to get after the quarterback.
Power.
But a lot of people are looking at that because then you're talking about, well, what does it look like? What's a regular arm length? He would have maybe the third or fourth shortest arms in the history of the combine since it started measuring, as an edge rusher specifically. Now, shortest arms overall, that actually goes to Kyler Murray, who measured in with 29.25 inch arms. There's, I think, a couple players who since then have passed up Kyler in terms of shorter arms. But Bain Jr. measured in with shorter arms. The question is, can long arm tackles be able to get after him? What we've seen a lot of is he's got a thick lower build. He's 270 pounds, so where Styles and Reese are 244, he's got an extra bit of girth. And what we've seen is he uses a lot of that lower speed to upper power to be able to shed different blockers and get after it in the run. And it gives him some upside as a pass rusher as well. The question is, Marcos, does those shorter arms spell potentially a reason for Bain to slip out of the top 3 and potentially fall even out of the top 10 picks?
Well, that was the kind of like the question when it came to like someone like Nick Bosa because he didn't have the longest arms coming out of college and whatnot, and they obsess over the arm length mostly because of the fact that the tackle position is usually dominated by long armed individuals, and as you can see, it's all about landing that punch first and having your hands low hand, high hand position. You hit with your outside. You land that punch. You hit him in that chest plate or whatnot, and that's how you maintain control after that. Well, if you're thinking about it like a boxer, well, like the person who's going to be able to land more consistent punches and have the advantage is the one with the longer arms and whatnot.
Right.
So it's the same thing when it comes to like football. You want to land that punch first. So if the tackle's able to get control right away, and your arm doesn't measure up to what he has, but he has control of you, you're gonna have to either fight under and be a very strong defensive end or defensive tackle or whatnot, and be able to get under his chest plate. But he's gonna dictate the control of that more often than not. So I would imagine that somebody like a what is it, Ruben Bain, right? Not Bailey. We're talking
Yeah.
about right here. Ruben Bain would be a high like boulder type of guy and a person that when he wins just like you saw right there, like just knocking some tackle on his ass and whatnot, and being able to like win with speed and maybe with like moves. So he's gonna have to develop a big toolbox of moves and not just go with power because I don't think he's gonna be successful versus like the top line tackles, especially those who have long arms. Like if he goes and lines up next to like a Joe All, or if he lines up across from like a like just put like a Trent Williams or whatnot, long armed individuals who are just going to be able to land their punches sooner. He's just not going to be effective in that situation. But if he's going up against like the normal tackle here and there, he'll win big, but then he'll be lost basically for the almost the entirety of the game.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting, at least too, is that that's one of the biggest concerns that people have when it comes to someone like Bane. I've seen enough on the film that I don't have that concern with how he wins because I think he's able to win by being one of the bendiest, flexible, and whether you look at whether his 3-cone, he's not running or participating in the combine, but his 3-cone would be a very good 3-cone style. Now, that being said, one of the other players that has put up some pretty good stats within the combine itself was David Bailey, another possibility for the Arizona Cardinals at 3. He ran a 4.50 40-yard dash. So 4.5 for a 250-pound athlete is fantastic. He went in at 251, ran a 10-yard split with only 1.64. That's wide receiver level for a 10-yard split. His vertical jump he had was higher than A.J. Green's. You think of A.J. Green as a big ball jumper. Yeah. David Bailey had a higher vertical jump, and the broad jump was actually bigger than Adrian Peterson's. Now, one thing on David Bailey we got to say, though, well, what's the catch? He did not run the 3-cone. And when you watch David Bailey on tape, he looks like he runs straight at the quarterback and doesn't have the same bend or agility to get around. He's got some good pass rushing moves, and he was also productive. So we talk about Arvell Reese when it comes to production. He wasn't used as much as an edge rusher. He had 6.5 sacks. You'd be translating and saying, can he make that move to the edge rusher? David Bailey already there. He had 14.5 sacks this season. He increased his sack total every single year, ended up with 29 overall sacks in college after he transferred from Stanford to Texas Tech this past year, thanks to NIL and transferring. He's got the production. He's got a lot of the measurables and metrics. He's not going to be very bendy, and that's the question is going to be, what are these prospects' limitations? And this is where you're kind of starting to see a picture. You're like, we've got a bendy player who produces athletically, but doesn't have the stats in Arvel Reese. You've got a not bendy player who does have the stats and the athleticism in David Bailey, and you've got this tremendously bendy athlete who didn't put up the the measurables that you're looking for, but did have the stats with 20 total sacks in college, 15 and a half tackles for loss, and 9.5 sacks this year, and Ruben Bang Jr. There is not one prospect who would check all of these boxes this year, Marcos. Each of the top three guys has a little bit of a flaw. And that's where a lot of people are wondering, could the Cardinals go in a different direction, such as a halfback like Jeremiah Love? Could they go and get the guy in Sonny Styles? Some people have looked at Caleb Downs, who is still yet to test this week. And then, of course, there's going to be Francis Maunoa, who is the my opinion, at least, he's going to be right up there with Caleb, I should say, Spencer Fano as a
That's
prospect
funny.
this year.
Yeah.
He's weighing in at 335 pounds, which is actually heavier. Some people thought he weighed in at 315. We'll see how he tests or what he even chooses to do as far as testing with his athleticism. He's another option for if the Cardinals, they don't have a right tackle right now. They need a right tackle. How he ends up going through the rest of the combine process is going to be really interesting to me because I'm curious to find out exactly how he measures out, how he ends up running. Right now, from what we know, at least, is that he's probably not going to be doing every single drill. We'll find out when he actually gets in front of the audience, but he's weighed in. He's going to weigh in a little bit heavier than expected. So whatever athleticism he has at that weight is going to be what sticks. I think what we're looking at, Marcos, is either you're going to take Mauanoa just straight up, or you're going to be Monty, and whoever the Jets take at number 2, it's either going to be very clear who you're taking at pick number 3, such as, oh, they took Arvel Reese, cool, we're taking Bain, no matter what happens. They take Bain, cool, we're taking David Bailey. They took David Bailey, cool, we've got either between Arvel Reese or Ruben Bain that we're going to take here. Whatever that case is going to be, I think that it becomes edge rusher versus Mauanoa, and I think at this point the edge rushers have the advantage, if just because I think it's a deeper class at offensive tackle, and like we've talked about in our mock drafts, there's a better opportunity for the Cardinals to get a good player on defense and then address the right tackle situation later with their second pick in the first round, or potentially in free agency, although I would not put a lot into free agency this year. I think the Cardinals are going to have to draft a right tackle because the sixth best in PFF's offensive tackle rankings, you're talking about, you're trying to find a better right tackle, is Jonah Williams. And that's not something that you want to see again if you are the Arizona Cardinals. Let's wrap up talking about our free agents that the Cardinals are showing here. First, I do want to be able to do a little bit of a shout out here. To Dana talking about whoever is quarterback matters less than fixing the O-line. If it's not a C, when you have a run game again, then what is at least 4 more wins? That's one of the biggest perks of if you add Mauanoa. You suddenly have Paris Johnson on the left, Mauanoa on the right. You already have a solid guy in the middle. Sign someone in free agency who's able to be an upper, or just trust the progress that you saw from some of the other guys who were there. And that's something that could end up being a really good push for the Arizona Cardinals to getting back to being a respectable team from their offseason rankings.
Yeah, or just get the guy in the second round that you were talking about, the Arizona State guy.
Yeah, right now the top guys, at least, who are offensive tackles that are available for the Cardinals are Rasheed Walker, Jermaine Elamunor, Braxton Jones is the biggest name on the list. Rob Havenstein retired. And you're looking at Braden Smith, who is next on the list. He's going to be let go and is going to be a free agent, looking at about 22 years for $20 million guaranteed, about $27 million deal. Trent Brown has just not been able to stay alive there enough. There's Elijah Wilkinson, who has actually played tackle for the Falcons this year because he had played guard for the Cardinals before. I don't see a reunion with them. Jonah Williams there, outside of the top PFF 150, but he's there at a 1-year, $9 million a year deal. If you're not able to get a Braden Smith or a Braxton Jones, maybe Rasheed Walker is one of those higher price guys. I would love to, if you're the Arizona Cardinals, to be able to draft a guy, bring in someone who's maybe a Kelvin Beachum back for 1 more year to take a little bit of pressure off, and then be able to have a long-term approach. That would be a much more favorable option if you are the Arizona Cardinals. And if you're Blake Murphy, that's what I would prefer for them to do.
Yeah, me too. That way we could just start developing these guys and have them, instead of having like these 1 or 2 year deals being signed by these veterans that are probably going to be high price, like offensive linemen and whatnot, that you're just going to lose in a couple of years. You could just develop your own guys and whatnot. What I would love to do, and you already know how I feel about this guy. Is like try to get Josh Jones back in the building.
Hmm.
Try to see if he can stay healthy because if he can come back in the building, being that he has some more experience at swing tackle and whatnot, he, what are you going to pay for that guy? You're not going to pay basically nothing for a guy like Josh Jones now. Is he under contract with the Seahawks? That would probably be something that I'd want to find out before I even make that assessment or
I
that
believe that he's still a free agent right now. He did start for the Seahawks there, but I'll have to double check at least with if he's
because
even
he gave
showing
us
up.
half a year of production that looked pretty good, and I looked at his film, and I looked at it thinking to myself like this guy's just a natural tackle. Why aren't we starting this guy at left or right?
Yeah, I think he's right now been under a 1 year deal with the Seattle Seahawks, but he's a free agent at least as it comes to where it is for right now. If you wanted to get him back in the building, you could, but looks like yeah, I'll have to take a look at least at that one. Right now, it looks like he is not necessarily. I can't tell if he's under contract or not. I believe that he signed a 1 year, $1 million deal with the Seahawks. Did pretty well, like you said, in his starting spot. I think if you're looking to cement down the position for a year, you bring him back in. But it does feel like that bridge has been burned with Arizona because remember, it was Monty Ossenfort himself
Yes.
who traded away Josh Jones, got a 5th-round pick back. I don't see Monty then saying, "We're going to go and spend to bring this guy who I traded away for a 5th, get him back into the building." I think that's something that is maybe that ship has sailed already. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up here for our episode of the Redbird Reboot podcast. Guys, we'll be back on the other side of the combine to talk a little bit more. Whether it's early next week or the middle of next week, we'll be there to talk about the rest of what we saw from the NFL combine. We'll be back to talk a little bit more about Kyler Murray's approaching cut deadline, as well as just a little bit of what our expectations are going to be for the Arizona Cardinals in 2026. Marcos, if you want to send off our folks with where they can find you and find your content, as I take a look at Lorenzo talking about a little bit of what he wants for you guys there on the stream. He's wanting a little bit more of a couple of defensive linemen. This is kind of our overtime segment for those of you who are listening on. He says that Benson's not been as durable thus far. Dana says that Bailey dropped his hips well on the last bag. Seems he's capable of Ben, but he's going to have to be a little more capable of that. Totally agree with that, Dana. Thank you guys for those comments. We love having those. We'll go through those on overtime. Marcos, if you want to, again, shout out where we can find you and your content.
Well, you can find me, and you can see the handle on my screen, obviously at X, at Pancake Soul. Also, you will find us here at the Cardinal Rules, where we're streaming now, and obviously you'll find most of our work. We're working on some stuff for the Mock Draft Mondays. We're gonna be obviously jumping on with the guest Uncle Joe on that,
It's going to
and
be great.
yep, it'll be great.
Yep, excited for that. We're excited to be able to bring you some more of that content as we get into draft season. Guys, this has been the Redbird Reboot podcast. I'm Blake Murphy. We just finished up talking about the NFL Combine, Kyler Murray, the coaching staff searches, the report cards, tons of content in this episode. Make sure that you're following us at Redbird Reboot and following the Cardinal Rule for all of your podcast needs as well with the audio portions of our podcast. This has been the Redbird Reboot. We've been rebooted, and it's time for us to log off. Have a good night, everyone, and go Cardinals.